Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Whenever this video finds you, I hope you're having a rad time. I'm the Figure Dude, and on today's action figure showcase, we're going to kick off the PG era of my collection with the Nexus. Without further ado, let's talk about some figures. Dude. Welcome back. Like I said, today I'm going to be looking at the Nexus, and I want to get more into the PG era of my collection, but admittedly, I kind of haven't because it's not a flashback era. I've looked at the Attitude era, I've gone all the way through Ruthless Aggression, I haven't gone back to the Golden era, but the PG era is just kind of modern, and I also was not watching at that time. I kind of kept up with wrestling. I don't even remember when I stopped. I didn't altogether just stop watching wrestling. But I took a few years where I just really wasn't paying attention to it. And the Nexus happened in between that period where I wasn't really watching. So I really didn't know a lot about the Nexus until I got back into watching. And really until I watched videos where they talked about John Cena burying the Nexus. So that is kind of how I ended up learning and then going back and watching things. But right here we have Wade Barrett. Obviously he was the leader, and I want to start with him. I'm going to start probably with the official versions because I've got a bunch of customs in here. So the Wade Barrett here is from Elite, I think it was 18 I looked up, and he had a few different Elites. So I think it's a nice figure. I do think that he brought this terrible torso to us that they randomly use with him and JBL. I think it's okay for Wade Barrett. Just a weird torso, but then the legs for him, I think his figures are good. I really didn't watch everything. All of my knowledge of Wade Barrett is essentially just him as Bad News Barrett, when he had a beard, essentially. So I was always kind of surprised, going back, that he didn't become anything bigger, but nonetheless, I have the Nexus. I needed the leader. Next up, we have Justin Gabriel and Michael McGillicuddy. So obviously you can see on the Curtis Axel figure or the Michael McGillicuddy, I don't have the tights design. I forgot, honestly. I just had I have a shirt. I have Nexus shirts for all these guys, but for the showcase, I took them off at the very end. I'll put them all back on so you guys can see in their entirety, but forgot I hadn't done his tights. I'll order some decals. He didn't wear the same Mr. Perfect inspired tights that he had. Or maybe they weren't even Mr. Perfect inspired. He wore different tights when he was wrestling as Curtis Axel. So with this one, I was going to do the claw marks that he had, and then I just never got around to it and kind of forgot about it. Wasn't someone that I'm going to make him because he's part of the Nexus, but wasn't one of the more prominent members that I think of. So Justin Gabriel here is an Elite, and I think we got two different versions. I think there's a pink version of him as well, a black and pink. I could be wrong there. I wasn't collecting figures then, so I've had to go back and pick up a lot of the stuff from the Mattel line, and I think right around when the red attire Wade Barrett, maybe Elite 28, around Elite 28 in the mid-20s, I think is when I kind of slowly started getting back into collecting. So this was one that I had missed out. I think it's a really cool figure. The boots, I think the wings on the boots that they actually did on the basic are way cooler because they molded on the wings or whatever. But I think it's a good looking sculpt for the Justin Gabriel. I'm not sure if all of these came with the Nexus armbands. So the ones that do, I tried to just swap arms. A lot of them had basics with the armbands, so I tried to swap those on, and I've slowly just been converting that. So there's Justin Gabriel and Michael McGillicuddy. Next up, we have two guys that would take very different paths after their time in the Nexus. We've got Daniel Bryan, and Skip Sheffield or Ryback. And it is funny seeing these guys Daniel Bryan went on to be a legend for. If you don't consider him a legend, perfectly fine. But in my eyes, he went on to be a massive star in WWE, obviously, and then in AEW, like, especially as far as indies go, like, he's a legendary performer. So Ryback or Skip Sheffield here went on to become a massive troll on the internet, and just it seemed to do everything he could to bury himself. But here I have the head from his Skip Sheffield basic, which is, to me, it's funny that he looks so different than his Ryback figures, and it kind of looks goofy because obviously it's the same guy. He's bald. It's just there's no beard on him, and I think it's weird. When I was getting back into wrestling, Ryback was kind of gaining popularity, and I think I picked up the new video game 2K12 maybe, and I was like, oh, this Ryback dude's crazy. And then when I went back, I saw the Nexus stuff, and I was like, oh, that looks like Ryback. It's just weird. It's so odd. I think he even had hair at one point. But for my Skip Sheffield figure here, I used his head and arms from the basic, but back when they were still doing like the same articulation for elites and basics on the arms. So he's got that Nexus armband, and then the torso is from a John Cena figure, and then I used Cesaro upper legs, and then the lower legs could be from an Elite 23 Cesaro, like the white attire one. I can't remember exactly. Made this one quite a bit ago. And then the Daniel Bryan figure is just one of his elites, and it's not necessarily like Nexus specific attire. I know that attire for him is New Japan inspired. I think New Japan. I can't remember which wrestler it is. I just saw it on Instagram the other day. So I just put this one because it had the like most generic, like the like there wasn't a lot of stuff on it. So this is just the one that I put in my Nexus collection. So Daniel Bryan and Skip Sheffield. Next, we have David Otunga and Heath Slater here, and Heath Slater does have plenty of elites, but not a Nexus version, I'm pretty sure. And then David Otunga also has a bunch of basics, but never got an elite singles or Nexus attire. So which is what sparked all of this, was that I thought we had basics of all these guys, but I didn't understand why they just didn't get the elite treatment, especially as prominent as they were for a while. So Heath Slater here is a Ted DiBiase figure, and then I just painted the tights, just hand painted them. The design on those is not crazy whatsoever, so just painted that myself, and then used his head sculpt and arms from a basic of his. And then David Otunga is a rock figure with Arn Anderson calves, and then arms from his head, or arms and head from his basic figure, one of his basic figures, which he had a few different looks, but I didn't have any. I had no need for a different Otunga other than the Nexus. So here's Heath Slater and David Otunga. The decals for the David Otunga were pretty difficult to put on. I got them early on in my figure collecting, or not figure collecting. Gosh, what am I talking about? I got those decals early on when I started to use decals again, and they're darker and kind of they break easily. So it was a task getting those on, and they're a weird design. They're just skulls and flames and airbrush, and it just was a weird design to get on the tight. So it was hard to blend, but nonetheless, I feel like it came out looking good. So I'm pretty happy with Heath Slater and David Otunga here. Next up, we have Michael Tarver and Darren Young, and Darren Young is one I've wanted to make for quite a while, a pretty long time. I decided to go ahead and make the Nexus version of him first. I'm pretty much going to use the Rock for all of his figures, and I wanted to make a Block the Hate Darren Young is in his singles run. And I really wanted primetime players Darren Young. That's another one. I'm surprised we never got elites of the primetime players. It took a long time just to get the Titus O'Neil elite himself. So Darren Young here again. Actually, Michael Tarver as well. We've got basic arms and head sculpt, which I think are both pretty good sculpts. And then the body for Darren Young, like I said, is a Rock, and then lower legs are from Ricochet, and then boots from a Heath Slater Elite. And then decals are from Curb Stomp, as always. With Michael Tarver, I took a Titus O'Neil body, and I don't love this formula for him. The torso I think is best is like a Stone Cold torso, but I didn't have any, and at the time I made it, I wasn't really into painting skin tones yet, so he's one I'm going to revisit completely redo his tights and everything. So it's essentially a stand-in for the collection for now, but it worked for the time. So Darren Young, Michael Tarver, moving on. Okay, so next up here, I have Mason Ryan and Ezekiel Jackson. And as far as I am aware, Ezekiel Jackson was part of the core, which is like a split-off group from the Nexus. And then Mason Ryan was part of the new Nexus. So neither of these guys were in the original Nexus, I think. Could be wrong there. That's my interpretation. But I wanted to make Mason Ryan. I'm surprised, again... I saw something talking about him and it was talking about like wrestlers that could have been or like had potential, and it said like Mason Ryan looks like a Batista clone, and the only bad thing is that he can't wrestle, which I thought was funny. It's what I think of with Mason Ryan, and admittedly I thought like the same thing. I thought like, oh, this dude looks like a Batista clone, beard just jacked, be out of his mind. Anyway, with the Mason Ryan here, I used, I think, a Batista body, and I might have even used, not boots from Batista. I can't remember who had those elite boots. The knee pad, you can see it's got, I took it from a Neville figure that I had broken apart, and then I ended up putting it back together, so I didn't want to acetone this knee pad, and then I just forgot to take it off. So I am going to switch out, so he's got the all black knee pads, but I think we had a basic in this white attire, and that's where I got the head and arms from, and then I just redid it in elite form. And then obviously Ezekiel Jackson, that's his official elite, which I think is awesome. I really like that. I think it's just the Brock Lesnar body. He was gigantic, obviously, so I think that this elite is also his best sculpt that we got. I think this is the one that came on him, but a really nice figure. Again, neither of these guys I wasn't watching, and then by the time I was back in, they were pretty much gone. So we do have one more guy to take a look at. Last but not least, we have the army tank with a Ferrari engine, I think is what his like little tagline was, but we've got Husky Harris, and this head sculpt I got from Heteration, and then the body I just kind of experimented with some different pieces to see what I like the most. So I've seen people use a Dusty Rhodes body, and I think even for Dusty that body's too big. I don't love it. I've seen people use like a Samoa Joe torso, but what I ended up doing was using a Dude Love torso, Mick Foley, and then just Daniel Bryan arms and Barry Windham legs. So the boots are repainted Barry Windham boots, essentially what he had. Like he wore the like repaint, like a different look, different color of what Barry Windham wore, because that was his uncle. Decals came from Curb Stomp. Obviously, it's Bray Wyatt, pre-Bray Wyatt, so he's got some of his tattoos, but not like his full sleeve and back and chest, like all of the tattoos. He had the tattoo in the calf, but this was one I was so excited to finally get to do, because I've wanted to like put the whole Nexus together, and obviously I couldn't do that without Husky Harris. So I'm trying to think if I'm missing anyone else. I think I got everyone. I have to take a peek and look, go check out Wikipedia or something, but nonetheless, that is it. That is everyone. Like I said, I do want to throw their shirts on so you can see them with all their Nexus shirts. Then we'll be out of here. Alrighty, so there is the Nexus, and the only one I have, I guess, here's Daniel Bryan. Throw him in there, even though his time in Nexus was brief as well, because he got fired for choking Justin Roberts. But that is it. That is everything for the showcase. And like I said, I'm planning to get to the PG era. I want to go through a bunch of those figures, and admittedly I need to brush up on like which series are from or which figures are from which series, because those were modern at the time. I know it's like 10, is it maybe 10 years ago? Yeah, a little more than 10 years ago. So some of those I'll be a little unsure, but there's some really good stuff in there. So I'm excited to get to those, and someone suggested that. So clearly at least one other person is excited to get there as well. So if you like the showcase, you want to go check out more, I have plenty on the channel. If you made it to the end of the video, I appreciate it. Please continue to like, share, subscribe, and remember, you can't buy happiness, but you can buy more action figures. Figure Dude out.